Honestly, I am truthfully intrigued as to how he will address the state of our nation. What is the state of our nation? What's the condition of it? And so there's obviously a whole bunch of different realms to which this could go, but particularly I'm interested in how he can phrase what's happening with the gender ideology propaganda being pushed in the education system, in women's prisons, and women's changing spaces, and of course women's sports, which is why I'm here. I'm advocating to protect women's sports on the basis of sex. I don't think women should be discriminated against on the basis of sex, and so I'm interested as to how he will phrase what that state of our union looks like without it coming off as total misogyny.
All right, guys. So the point of this video is that this woman right here needs to be protected at all costs. Okay, she is fighting the good fight on behalf of women, a lot of whom who are afraid to speak up because they're afraid of being canceled by the mob when it comes to this issue of women's rights being eroded away by men who want to be women and intruding on women's only spaces. Okay, and the woke revolutionaries are allowing this in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Okay, if you are opposed to this, right, if you're for women's rights, then you are a bigot, you are a transphobe. However, what the wokes fail to understand is that women are having traumatic experiences. They are very uncomfortable with biological males in women/female spaces. They're uncomfortable with it. They don't like it. But apparently, again, when it comes to this conversation right here, this issue right here, women's feelings don't matter, right? It goes out the window. Okay, the feelings of a man supersede or are more important than those of a biological woman. And this woman right here, Miss Riley Gaines, who is a swimmer, a damn good swimmer because she's an All-American, she had to compete against Lia Thomas, okay? And because she had to compete against Lia Thomas, she was also forced to share a locker room / bathroom with Lia Thomas. Lia Thomas is, again, a biological man that wants to be a woman or is trying to be a woman. And Riley Gaines said that Lia Thomas exposed his male genitalia to the other women, the biological women in the locker room, which again, it's probably a traumatic experience for her. And that has led her to even put her career to the side, what she wants to do in her life, to become an activist, a real activist, a sports advocate. And she's calling on the NCAA to establish separate locker rooms for transgender athletes competing in female sports. And I mean, I would imagine that she probably wants it banned, right? She probably wants them not to be able to compete against women, period. So without further ado, let's go ahead and roll this clip. Take a look.
A former University of Kentucky women's swimming star who's called out the Biden administration over what she calls its gender ideology propaganda, attending the State of the Union address last night. Riley Gaines raising concerns about a White House push for transgender athletes to compete in sports based on their gender identity rather than their biological sex. You have been a tireless campaigner to ensure female athletes have an equal opportunity to perform in women's sports. Let me just repeat that. To ensure female athletes have an equal opportunity to perform in women's sports. The fact that you even have to do that is beyond ironic.
It's beyond ironic, and honestly, you have all these people all the time tell me how courageous it is to speak to this and how brave I am. But truthfully, does it make someone brave to just acknowledge that women deserve equal opportunities? That's how far we've come as a society and within our culture.
Right, and you have been roundly criticized by many people for taking this stance.
Right.
But this is a situation that is unique to women's sports because you don't hear about male athletes fighting to make sure that male athletes have an equal opportunity to compete in men's sports.
No.
I mean, if a woman transitions to a man and competes in men's sports, it's going to be no competition.
Exactly.
But if it goes the other way around, as it did with Lia Thomas, you go from number 462 to number 1 overnight.
Exactly, and I think that's important, worth noting. All of these state bills that are being passed, everyone who's arguing in opposition of these fairness in women's sports bills, they're talking about trans women being able to compete. And it's because trans men, They're not under jeopardy. The men's category is not under threat. It's the women's category that's under threat.
Right. So one of the things that you are campaigning against with the NCAA is to make sure that men who have transitioned to be a woman do not share the same locker room as female athletes.
Correct.
Did you share a locker room with Lia Thomas?
Yes. The NCAA, of course, we competed against Thomas, but we were not forewarned beforehand that we would be sharing a locker room with Lia. We did not give our consent. They did not ask for our consent. But in that locker room, we turned around and there's a 6'4" biological man dropping his pants and watching us undress. And we're exposed to male genitalia. And so that to me...
Because he hasn't had surgery, gender-affirming surgery.
Correct. At the time, correct. And so that to me was worse than the competition piece. Not even probably a year, 2 years ago, this would have been considered some form of sexual assault, voyeurism. But now... not even are they just allowing it to happen, it's almost as if these large organizations are encouraging it to happen. Of course, after our NCAA championships, the NCAA then nominated Thomas for NCAA Woman of the Year. So we're celebrating this movement. This isn't something that happened by chance on a one-off basis. They're encouraging men to compete in women's sports.
Now, following graduation, it was your intent to go to dental school. You have put that off because you want to continue this battle that you have begun. And you told me off camera that you're hoping that other female athletes
Correct.
will step up to the plate here, but they're not.
Correct.
And why don't you think they are?
You know, people are terrified, especially speaking from my experience of talking to other NCAA swimmers specifically. Lia Thomas's teammates even, they're told their school has made their stance for them. They're told that if they feel uncomfortable seeing male genitalia in the locker room, then they should seek counseling resources. They're told that they will never get into grad school if they speak out. All of these terrible, awful things that aren't true. They're told, of course, they'll be called a bigot and hateful and transphobic. But it doesn't make you any of those things to acknowledge that there are two sexes. You cannot change your sex, and women deserve respect and equal opportunities.
We'll keep watching you, and we hope that you'll get the chance to go to dental school one of these days.
Thank you so much.
Riley, good to meet you.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Yeah, this young woman is a hero, right? Or heroine, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Is it heroine? I think that's it for female hero. But yeah, regardless, she's amazing. She is absolutely amazing. I mean, think about it. She's standing up to the mob, okay? She's facing, cancellation, okay? She could literally be canceled for the rest of her life. She's trying to go to dental school. I'm not sure if she's actually been accepted in any dental schools. It seems like she has. It doesn't seem like she's been stopped or that she has, not got accepted to a school. I'm not sure exactly where that's at, but regardless, women who speak out about this stuff, they do face cancellation from some of these major institutions, right? Like, again, there's a chance that maybe, just maybe, if the mob makes enough noise, maybe she won't be allowed in dental school. I mean, look at Kyle Rittenhouse, right? Kyle Rittenhouse has, been planning to go to college for I don't know how long now, and every single school this man applies to or he puts out that he's thinking about going to, the mob protests, right? And I think that's made it a lot harder for him to live a normal, regular life, even though the guy was found not guilty of murder. Okay, he's not a murderer. He was acting in self-defense. He can't live a regular life because, again, the mob has made it their life's goal to cancel him, to make sure he can't live a regular life, right? And this woman speaking out and standing up for this, putting her own career aside, putting her own ambitions aside to stand up for other women, it's truly amazing stuff. Right? It really is amazing. Like I have goosebumps like thinking about it. Right? I really do. Women like her are the women that we should be putting on a pedestal in our society as women that other young girls should aspire to be like. Okay, who's brave enough to stand up for the right thing and to fight for legitimate women's rights and women's issues. Right? I'm just saying because. The so-called feminists, they should be out in droves over this, right? This should be their number one issue, is men, invading their sports, invading their spaces, right? There's not equal opportunity or equal competition anymore for women who are forced to compete against men, right? Again, that's not even mentioning the issue of the men, biological men, being in women's locker rooms. Okay, you're forcing women to see male genitalia that they don't want to see. They don't want to see it. It's uncomfortable for them. For all of society, we basically segregated men and women, especially when it comes to bathrooms, right? Private places where you're changing, okay? Again, private parts are being exposed. I'm sure some of those women not only were uncomfortable seeing male genitalia, they were uncomfortable undressing, being naked in front of a man. Now, I don't know if Lia Thomas is gay, right? I'm not sure if Lia Thomas likes, men or women or whatever, but it doesn't matter. It's still a man, right? But because we live in Cuckoo for Cocoa Puff world, where a certain segment's feelings matters more than the general population, right, or 99% of the rest of society, this is what we have to deal with. Women have to be inconvenienced and traumatized in the name of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it doesn't make sense because there's a simple solution here. The simple solution, okay, when it comes to the bathroom issue is, hey, use the bathroom that correlates with your biological sex. It's really that simple. Or use a gender neutral facility. It's really that simple. And when it comes to competing in sports, the solution is compete based off your biological sex or compete in the transgender competition, right? If the woke revolutionaries love transgender people so much and want them to be able to compete and have their own sports, then have a transgender competition, right? Have it transgender people only, and allow them to compete. But see, the problem is that the wokes will never support that, right? The same way they never support women's sports, right? They claim that they love women so much, right? And women are underpaid, the gender pay gap, but they can't show up to a WNBA game, right? They won't show up to a WNBA game. They won't show up to a parade, okay? They don't want to watch women's sports. They don't watch women's sports. And it's a shame that the women that are competing, okay, they don't get enough attention. They don't get enough praise. But then now they also got to compete with men, right? Again, it's crazy. It's absolutely insane that this is where we're at in society. But again, kudos to this young woman for, having the cojones to stand up directly to the mob and become a real political activist and to fight for a real issue in this country when it comes to women's rights. Again, it takes a very, very, very brave person to do this. This is what stunning and brave actually really looks like. So this woman must be protected at all costs. Protect her at all costs. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.